Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to the top 8 matchup of the Disney Lorcana Into the Inklands Set Championship, hosted by Fanboy 3. My name is Ben. It's a pleasure to have your company with us here today, and whenever you are watching this. And we have got a great matchup here for you as well. But if you want to see how some of these players got to this point in the Swiss rounds, or want to watch the rest of the tournament in full and uninterrupted as well, you can check out the playlist for this event that's linked in the top of the description or in the iCard as well. But we have for you the top 8 matchup. We have our number 1 seed, Chris, who went through the Swiss rounds of today's play undefeated, 5-0-1, playing the Sapphire Ruby Dime Control list. And we have a familiar face on the right-hand side of your screen in the 8 seed. It's Jordan playing the Ruby Amber Mufasa deck that was showcased in round 2 as well. So if you want to check out how Jordan got on in round 2, obviously did well enough to be able to qualify here into the top 8 as the final seed. But they are matching up here in the top 8 game, ready to try and get one win away from securing that Enchanted Stitch promo card. The players just shuffling up quite heavily, as all players in the top 8 had to go through a deck check before going into their matches here. So the judging staff, and a massive shout out to the judging team as well at this Into the Inklands Set Championship event as well. Done a tremendous job here today. I've gone through, made sure that everyone's deck has been in order, and all the cards are accounted for. Everything is fine and ready to go as Chris and Jordan are setting up their opening hands and looking for their mulligans. Chris is sending, it looks like, the whole thing back at the start of this one. Jordan still just deciding. I think I see there's a double Tremaine in there, which I think one of them will be wanted to be sent back. I think we saw a Prince Eric. There's a Dragon Maleficent in there as well that Jordan's just considering there about whether to mulligan away or not. And there's going to be a mulligan 4-4 as well. So a reminder as well, you can see at the top of your screen that this is an untimed matchup. There's no time restrictions on the games in the top cut. So top 8, top 4 and your final will be untimed, but the players have been reminded and have been advised, of course, to ensure that they play in a regular fashion still, and in a timely fashion. The judges will be keeping an eye on that throughout these games, but with the mulligans now resolved and sorted, we can get the game underway. Ink a teeth and ambitions and play a 1-cost Minnie Mouse for Jordan to start this top 8 matchup, as Chris is going to ink for 1 and play Develop Your Brain. So we'll be able to find the top 2 cards of his deck, draw one of them into his hand. The other will have to go to the bottom of the deck, but we'll get some early filtration, some early cycling for Chris and into his hand. Jordan will get on the board first though, questing for 1. And we'll see if there's any follow-up here. There isn't. Now for Chris, what's going to be most important here is if he can find a ramp card of some description. It doesn't look like he's going to. It looks like there's a Shield of Virtue that Chris has played, then Ink and pass. So not the turn 2 that we've come to expect from this Dime Control list. Typically wants to find that turn 2 1 jump ahead to get up to 3 Ink, then the turn 3 here in Flavisham to capitalise off a Porpsicle that was played on turn 1, but not necessarily going to plan at the moment for Chris, and he's just considering his options in his hand at the moment as we go into this turn 3. Ink a Let It Go, which you saw the little reaction there from Jordan, was happy to see that go into the inkwell. And again, Chris is forced to pass the turn, so this is not going to plan whatsoever at the moment. In game 1, Jordan's being allowed to race away up to 5 lore now. And he's threatening to double it next turn. We'll finally be able to play a ramp of some description in the form of How Far I Will Go. We'll be able to look at the top 2 cards of his deck once again, put one of them into hand and the other into the inkwell. So that means that Chris is now up to 5 available ink next turn. I see there's a Porpsicle in hand as well for some card draw next turn. But that's not going to be before Jordan, undoubtedly. You'd have to imagine quests up to 10. It looks like that's exactly what Jordan's going to be able to do. And that dock's now activated as well. He's going to be able to pay 1 less for the next character that Jordan plays. And it will be the Prince Eric that we saw in round 2. Puts some work in. There is that Porpsicle that we expected to come down for Chris. Pay the remaining 4 for another How Far I'll Go. Thought maybe for a second it was going to be the Flavisham to immediately discard the Porpsicle and draw 2 more cards, but instead has to start ramping some more and inking the hard way. I think with an ink here, though, he might get up to 7, which would be territory for Chris to be able to drop the Be Prepared next turn. Inking a Dragon Maleficent to get there, but still has to pass the turn over to Jordan, who will be able to quest up to 17. And it'll be about whether Jordan and how heavily he wants to lean into the potential Be Prepared that will come the next turn. Jordan does quest up to 17. Wouldn't be shocked if Jordan just elects to pass the turn here. He doesn't want to play too heavily into the Be Prepared. Chris draws for turn and scoops it up. No answer, no Be Prepared. And he shows the hand there as well as a Tremaine, Medusa, Lucky Dime there as well, but not enough to answer the board state that Jordan had been able to create quickly.
I mean, as soon as you went to Let It Go, I was like, he is.
And Jordan goes up a game to nothing in top 8 in very, very quick fashion. For
not the right time for the Luxor now.
Realising, of course, it's is an untimed final. Didn't have to worry too much about the time constraints in that one as the players shuffle up and get ready for game 2. A little bit of a chat with each other as well.
Sorry, they're all leaving now.
Tell you a couple of other players that have made it into the top 8 as well. You've got Cree, who was seen in rounds 3 and 4 in the feature match area here as well. David, of course, the round before with his winning in round 6. Also Ross there as well, that's managed to get in, as well as Hal after winning his round 5 matchup. So plenty of talented players have made it to this stage, just being one game away. Massive congratulations to everyone that has made it to this stage. It's not an easy feat to do, to make it into the top 8 of a tournament that managed to amass almost 60 players into the opening round count. These 8 players have come out on top, but Chris will have to play from behind in order to get himself to top 4 contention as players take their mulligans. Of course, the biggest key, I think, for Chris in this game too is just being able to find the pieces of this dime control puzzle early on. Didn't have turn 1 Porpsicle, didn't have turn 2 1 jump. This time, it's going to be a little bit different. At least that's the early indication with a turn 1 Porpsicle for Chris. Going to be able to draw himself an extra card. And pass the turn over to Jordan, who will ink a Bodyguard Simba and pass the turn. No turn 1 play for Jordan there. And that will buy Chris a little bit of time to be able to go turn 2, 1 jump ahead. Ink up to 3. I think I see a Flavisham in hand as well for Chris. So he'll be able to ink, play Flavisham on turn 3, draw another 2 cards, as well as the card he'll draw ordinarily for turn as well. This is marked a lot better of a start. A far superior start for Chris in this second game, as Jordan, having a look at his options here, has double Rapunzel in hand, or had double Rapunzel after inking 1 away. And he's then going to play the Mother Gothel as the turn 2 play, so setting up for the heal potential, it looks like, in 2 turns' time. Also, there is the namesake card of Jordan's deck in hand as well, the Mufasa. Potentially ready to come down on turn 5. But Chris will play that Hero of Flavisham that we thought we saw. Draw 2 cards past the turn. Jordan, a little spot of bother early on in this game too. Of course, playing the Ruby Ink does have access to plenty of removal options. I'm going to ink the Mufasa and play down a second Mother Gothel past the turn. I thought maybe there would have been a consideration or maybe a temptation for Jordan to quest with one of the Gothels. And we're going to quest for 1 with Hero and Flavisham, play down the Shield of Virtue to just discard it to the ability. Draws some more cards. It's a very healthy and sizable hand that that Chris has managed to get. Going to ink Grandma Tala and play Grandma Tala for the turn. Look at the top 2, very similar to Develop Your Brain in the effect, but it's just on the body of a character as well. Pass back over to Jordan, who I imagine is going to slam down that Rapunzel to get some draw acceleration of his own. Finds Dragon Maleficent. I think one of the cards is a Teeth and Ambitions as well, and a Prince Eric as the 3 cards that he draws off of the Rapunzel. None of them don't think are necessarily going to help him at this stage right now. So Jordan will quest for 1 and pass the turn back to Chris, who is accelerating quite nicely, and that Porpsicle will continue to help Chris accelerate. Quest for 1 with the Hero and Flavisham, discard the Porpsicle, draw 2 more cards. Perhaps looking to try and find that Fishbone Quill to help continue to ramp and accelerate even more, turn some of those uninkable cards that might be clogged in Chris's hand at the moment into resources. And there, in fact, is that Fishbone Quill. The Tala still able to quest as well. If Chris wants to start forcing Jordan into a little bit of a race or into some challenge exchanges. We're going to ink from hand first. But where and what do we follow up with? Quill, of course, can be activated and utilised. Of course, is those that may be newer to Disney Lorcana, while you might not be able to quest with a character that has just entered into play, you can use items as soon as they enter into play, the turn they do. So 1 jump ahead He's played as well to continue to accelerate up into ink. Maybe looking to try and race quicker towards a lucky dime bell combination. But for now, the Taler does in fact quest, and Chris will end his turn there. So Jordan, now on his side of the board, will play another Rapunzel that he managed to find. Draws into, what was that, Maui? I think Scar was one of the cards as well. Can't quite see what the third card was that Jordan managed to pick up there from the second Rapunzel heal. Of course, reads heal up to 3 damage and draw a card for each damage healed that way. Or ink and do double challenge into Hero and Flavisham. Jordan saying that you've gained enough card advantage from that character, so we'll deal with that. Quest for 2 with Rapunzel. And tie the game to 3 a piece. Tala will start off the turn by singing How Far I'll Go. Again, continuing to accelerate resources into the inkwell. I think I do see that a bell is in hand for Chris. It will be about whether there is a dime there as well. We're going to rest and exert 7 and player be prepared of Chris's own says that Jordan has had enough of the wide board state that's there.
Because you would have quested, right? Blew it up, drew 2 cards, maybe. I don't know.
And Jordan has to rebuild now, as does Chris. But Chris, obviously, with all the acceleration and all the ramp that he's been able to do with 1 jump aheads and how far all goes, he's going to have a lot of resources and a lot of ability to play not only wide but also quite tall. He's going to be able to play multiple high cost characters and force Jordan to have the likes of Be Prepared or Dragon Maleficence of his own in order to combat them. Over to Jordan's turn then, and himself has quite a few cards in his hand. Ink, a Teeth and Ambitions, with no characters on board to utilise it. Makes sense to do so. We're going to play a Baloo and a Doc and pass turn over to Chris. Looking down in his hand at the moment. Actually, one of the Be Prepared's already gone, so there's not going to be, or it's unlikely that there's going to be a second one to come down to banish this Doc and Baloo. We're going to start off with a Quill, interestingly, from Chris's side of the board. Now we're going to go 9, Dragon Maleficent into the Doc, and pass the turn. From there, Ink Mini. Play down a second Doc and a Prince Eric, and then the Baloo will quest. And pass the turn. Back to Chris once again. Now a Be Prepared would be a little more dangerous, I suppose. 1 for a Porpsicle. Still has the Fishbone Quill as well to be able to use this turn. We'll go Flavisham instead. Draw 2. After banishing that Popsicle. Does the Maleficent Dragon here want to challenge into the Baloo and sort of concede that law early, or are we going to be happy to let that stay around for at least a turn or 2 more? Now we're going to use the Quill. Pay 6, possibly a Medusa here. It will be, and that sends away the dock. Challenge into the Baloo, so Jordan will gain the law off of the Baloo being banished. And the turn will be passed over. Pretty solid turn there for Chris's side of the board. Hades is going to bring back Rapunzel, though, as it gets played down.
Sorry, that's upside down. Sorry. I'll ink Simba.
Ink Simba. I see at the front of the hand that Jordan's got a Chernobog, and that's exactly what is going to be paid down as well.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
6 characters in the discard pile, so they will be able to be shuffled back into the deck to help pay for that big Chernobog.
4, 5, 6, 7,
A card we certainly didn't expect to see too much play throughout the day, especially not here in towards the top 8. Is thundered down onto the board, and now Chris really needs to find a response to that card, otherwise it could have the capacity to get slightly out of hand, as Eric is going to go and quest for 2. And pass the turn over to Chris. So we'll start off with a Fishbone Quill usage. Quest for 1 with Hiram Flavisham. Discards the Quill. A reminder of the effect, of course, of that Chernobog. Right now it is the 9/9 3-law Quester. And Sing Let It Go for Chris. Going to send away that Prince Eric. So that'll stop the damage effects going on. And then a Dragon Maleficent will discard the Chernobog as well. Heard a little bit of a laugh and a joke there between the 2 players. Jordan saying, well, you can take the Hades on the effect if you really like to. I certainly wouldn't stop you if that was the case. Another Popsicle. Draw another card. And the Maleficent, Chris believing is going to be safe to quest up for 2. And send the play right back over to Jordan, who, after being able to play the Chernobog down that turn prior, thinking that he might have had the opportunity to try and run away with the game and close it out, just wasn't to be. Now, Jordan, as we hinted at earlier on in this game, has to deal with not only a very wide board state, but quite a tall one as well. Double Dragon Maleficent and a Madame Medusa. They've got some serious willpower on each of them.
How many cards you got?
And that's what Jordan is going to have to try and consider and think about here. We're going to play a Scar, which will be able to try and challenge into a few different characters. We'll start off by dealing with Hiram Flavisham and stopping that chain from going on and continuing. And then we'll challenge and trade into the Exerted Dragon Maleficence that deals with the larger lore quester that was on Chris's side of the board, but that Madame Medusa right now still
I could have done a way better play, but it's fine.
is in play, and Jordan saying that he could have done a better play. Maybe it's involving the teeth and ambitions that was
I'll tell you later.
in the hand.
I made a mistake before, but you didn't punish me for it, so it's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Only Jordan will know, and only time will tell how much of a telling potential mistake that could spell in the context of this game. Jordan is still up, not only on the scoreboard of this game, but also up a game over Chris in this 3-game set.
6 for Tremaine.
As Tremaine will deal with Jordan's remaining character as well. Economic from Chris. And also represents 2 lore itself. There is the bell now for Chris, which will be active as a 5 lore quester, not just the 1. As Chris sends the Maleficent and the Medusa on a quest themselves, up to 3. And Jordan will respond by dragon firing a Maleficent, dragoning that bell, stopping Chris from potentially winning this game, actually, if he had the lucky dime in hand.
3, 6, 8,
And Chris will respond with Tamatoa, a very similar or familiar scenario that we've seen with that Tamatoa in these early builds of the sort of item slingers deck lists. Grab the Porpsicle, play it back down. Now we'll just have to worry about what gets challenged into potentially if Chris wants to try and engage in the race.
for 5.
Going to quest with everything up to 14. Chris will go. Jordan going to have to take his time here and think about what way round he's going to want to try and deal with these threats that are on board at the moment. Game is represented on board with 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 lore at the moment at least, including the Tamatoa.
Maldragon into Tremaine.
So we'll start off by dealing with 2 of that lore. Dragon Maleficent will challenge into the Lady Tremaine and banish it. Does have looks like a second Dragon Maleficent in hand to potentially pop the Tamatoa. Will heal first with a Rapunzel, draw 3. Inke Simba. There's a Mother Gothel in there as well, but we'll play down the Prince Eric.
Kill Eric.
And then
With Eric's ability.
cheap teeth and ambitions to deal with the Tamatoa. Thanks to Prince Eric's ability, as soon as it's banished, it will take the character with it.
Put up a fight at least.
And then the 2
It might end.
residual damage will be dealt onto the Madame Medusa as well. So a good turn and a well-conceived turn there from Jordan, but maybe that was the play
Sorry, I knocked it when I was.
that he was hinting at earlier on in this game about him saying that he could have done a way better play. So 17 lore represented on board at the moment for
I
Chris.
don't like you when you do that.
Enough.
Enough, yeah, alright.
Chris, they're saying that he's got enough ink
5.
to be able to close out this game, perhaps. Here is a Maui to deal with that Dragon Maleficent. Will protect anything that Chris quests with now. There will be Medusa as well, just to make doubly sure. Quest for 3, up to 17. This top deck has to be massive for Jordan.
We have to go Maldragon
There is the Mal
on Maldragon.
to take out the other one.
Ink Mini, play Gothel.
Ink Mini play Gothel and pass the turn. So again, not losing to the onboard threats right now. But if there is a lucky dime in hand, we can quest for 2 up to 19. Play dime and activate it, and that will draw the game's level and send us to game 3. Chris will quest for 2 up to 19.
Must be one in there somewhere.
I mean, yeah, right? Yeah, I mean, you've not gone through, unless you've one jump on.
I think he's admitting there, actually, Chris, that he doesn't have lucky dime in hand. So we'll have to maybe be a little bit more inventive with the way that he tries to close this game out. 12 ink available at Chris's disposal.
I am only on 8. You got fucking forever, mate. I'm not gonna lie.
Jordan saying that he's Chris has got quite some time to close this game out and find that lucky dime, potentially, to close the game. With Jordan only on 8 lore.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know, mate. If I somehow play like 10 Blues and then blow them all up with Big Prepared.
Play tablets.
That's fair.
So many different.
Jordan saying that in an ideal world there, it's what he's would hope to try and find in this game. Tamatoa plays down and finds another Porpsicle from the discard pile. We'll replay it. So now even the Tamatoa questing itself will be enough. Draw for turn. Is there going to be a way that we deal with this board state right now? I think with the cards that Jordan has in hand, potentially there is. We'll play Mufasa. Maldragon goes into the undamaged Madame Medusa. Teeth and Ambitions will be sung by the Mother Gothel to deal 2 damage onto the Mufasa, get rid of the other Medusa, then Tremaine away the Tamatoa. But I think Chris just top deck dime. I think Chris just drew dime. That was a really, really strong turn to deal with that board state Chris had been able to build. But I think this should be, if we've seen it right, and if I've seen it right with the cards that are left in hand, it should be play any character, play down lucky dime. There is the dime. Has still, what is that, 6 ink to work with as well. We'll let it go. Away the Mufasa. Pay 1 and develop your brain. So we're not going to close the game out just yet. It seems.
Yeah, right.
Pass the turn.
Play Doc, Quest 5.
Play Doc, Quest 5, up to 13. Scar in hand. We'll do it. And just like that, we are off to a sudden death game 3 in this top 8 matchup. It's been a really close game.
15-16 by then.
Yeah, that's fair.
That game 2 was certainly played more in Chris's ballpark. Jordan, the biggest, I think, one of the biggest swings was dealing with that Chernobog in the early game, the early to mid-game stages.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was there. I was like, well, all I can do, though, is remove all your stuff and pray. Pray that somehow you one-jumped all of your Reaper.
Hear the conversation that's being had at the table, the prayers of that you've one-jumped away all your Be Prepareds and all your lucky dimes, which is, he has got a point here, actually, Jordan. It's definitely one of the biggest drawbacks of this deck, because you're having to ramp blindly occasionally. you do have the fear of sending away some of those key pieces, and without that knowledge of being able to do so either. As we see one of those be prepared in Chris's opening hand, as well as the players look to take their mulligans. We are one game away from putting one of these players into the top 4 and granting them their Enchanted Stitch promo. As we encourage you, if you've enjoyed the coverage of the game so far, if you enjoyed the coverage of the tournament in a whole as well, we'd encourage you to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well, to make sure that you don't miss any future coverage of events like this. And of course, most importantly, keep an eye out on the official Fanboy 3 social channels for the announcements of when events like this are ready to take place, because you never know, this could be you battling in this top 8 matchup in a tournament in the future. But the mulligans are done with, the shuffling's over. We are underway with game 3 in top 8. Jordan will first start off by inking away the Teeth and Ambitions. Chris will go on to his turn. There is a turn 1 Porpsicle. And it's sent straight back over to Jordan. Double Rapunzel in hand for Jordan as well, along with a Gothel. So we can combo with that at turn 4. Is a 1 jump ahead as well for Chris on turn 2. So early game going to plan once again for Chris at the moment. Jordan, on the other hand, will ink away a dock. Play down the evasive Minnie Mouse in quest for 1. Obviously, he doesn't have to worry right now about that Mother Gothel going into the discard pile and being challenged into. We're going to, in fact, play 2 for a Queen of Hearts. And a little bit of a chuckle there with Jordan saying that he knew that he shouldn't have quested with it because he knew that Chris had the Queen of Hearts in his list. So a little bit of foresight, or a lack of foresight there, being punished by Chris. There's a quest for 2, up to 3. And now doesn't get the ability to draw those cards from the Rapunzel. So over to Chris's turn. Is up to 5 ink now. We'll play down a Fishbone Quill. Use it immediately. Ink for turn. Does he have a Hiram Flavisham? No. It's a Grammatala, left with 1 card in hand. Much to the disbelief it sounded like from Jordan there. As the turn is passed over. Quest for 3 with both the characters on board, up to 6. How do we follow it up? There's double Rapunzel in hand that could just be played as more of a kind of vanilla card in this situation as a 2-lore quester, but doesn't feel like it was worth it, and Jordan agrees, so the turn will be passed. Chris will challenge into the blue. Going up to 8 lore. Develop your brain for Chris with a slender hand at the moment. Slimmer one than we used to seeing him with in the game 2. And this is point in game 2. There is the Hiram Flavisham that Chris was maybe hoping for the turn before. We'll draw 2 cards as soon as it's played by discarding the Porpsicle from play. And now can maybe start to snowball a little bit better and build a little bit more through this game 2 or game 3. Still hasn't used Fishbone Quill. So that's an option if Chris wants to accelerate again. Decisions having to be made here. The ink counted up by Chris. Will use Quill and pass the turn. So Jordan could potentially, I mean, that Minnie Mouse does represent 2 free lore essentially right now, with it being evasive, as that's the first action Jordan will take. That's probably the way that you the way that you kind of beat and try and topple these Sapphire Ruby Lucky Dime control decks, is just try and race them and try and get to a high enough lore count where they have to be the ones to respond to what you're doing before they manage to ramp up to a high enough level for them to start playing the game. As that Rapunzel is going to finally be used with effect. Playing down the Gothel first and then being healed. As the first action for Chris will be to continue to accelerate into the Inkwell. Tala sings How Far I'll Go.
Last week I had 3. I had to cook to 2 because every time it would be...
Play a Porpsicle.
Yeah. I know how it feels. It's happened to me.
So that possibly represents that Flavisham questing, and that's exactly what happens. Discard one of the Porpsicles, draw 2 cards. Still a good 6 ink, I think, available for Chris. In fact, make that 7. And even potentially up to 8 as well if Chris wants to use Fishbone Quill, who's going to go digging a little bit further first. Develop your brain once again. It's a real decision that he's having to make here, actually, with these 2 cards that he's found. Jordan right now can quest up to 15. And maybe just try and flood out the board, and hope that Chris doesn't have Be Prepared in hand. And, well, there it is. Speaking of...
It's been my hand all turn.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Be Prepared, and Chris, they're saying to Jordan that it's been on my hand all turn. And that will set Jordan back quite considerably in this game and in this matchup.
Okay, cool.
Jordan, on his turn, will ink away a Dragon Maleficent, will play down a Mufasa and a Minnie Mouse. So perhaps we can finally start seeing the Mufasa strategy actually coming into play and into effect. Never mind. Never mind. It's going to get frozen and sent into the Inkwell with a hard cast of Let It Go. Jordan there even seeing the funny side of the lack of Mufasa effect being allowed to go forwards. As Chris inks, plays another Grandma Tala. So clearly trying to find something here is Chris with these continuous Grandma Talas and Develop Your Brains as well. And pass the turn over to Jordan, who still has that Minnie Mouse left on board.
Well, you've top 8 the 2 biggest tournaments in the UK. Top 8 Dark Shade, top 8
A little sigh as Jordan knows that he's been forced into a little bit of a difficult situation, difficult spot here. The way that this game has continued to pan and play out. Evasive Mini, Quest 1, and pass the turn. It's going to be for Chris. The difficult part about this is that I think that with Jordan with 2 cards in hand, one of them is a Lady Tremaine. And at the moment, there's not really a target for Tremaine to really get the true value out of the effect, forcing your opponent to banish one of your own characters. Doesn't really feel good to force Chris to just banish the Tala, as we are over with the Dime Control player's turn.
This guy, a little slow, same deal.
Could look to try and deal with that evasive threat first. I think that might be what it is going to be the play. Maldragon will take down the evasive Mini. Chris just asking how many cards are left in
From 11 to 20.
in your hand there, Jordan. Is saying, don't worry about what's in my hand. This little one-drop Minnie Mouse is going to carry me into the top 4. The turn is going to be passed. Mufasa for Jordan. Maybe this one might be allowed to stay around a little bit longer at 12 and pass the turn on to Chris, who would love to find another Let It Go to stop that Mufasa from gaining its effect. At the moment, Jordan could potentially quest up to 15 lore. That can't foresee that being allowed to happen. Here is a Scar that will challenge into that Minnie Mouse. So there goes that plan Jordan had earlier to have the Mini quest him all the way up to 20. And there's going to be the Tremaine, so we will get the effect. And it's not a bad grab either. Getting the Dragon Maleficent will take Chris's Maleficent along with it as well. And pass the turn, not wanting to send the Grandma Tala questing, knowing that it would be easy for Jordan to just challenge into with Dragon Maleficent. Chris with just 1 card in hand, but 3 characters on board. We'll play down the Tremaine first off. Easy choice there from Chris to discard the Grandma Tala. Minnie Mouse is back. I think it's now, at this stage, probably just quest for 2. With the Maleficent, and hope that Chris doesn't have a Be Prepared. That's the biggest out to this board. Jordan could quest up to 19 next turn if all his characters are left unchallenged and unchecked. We're going to go Flaversham.
You just stop like that? No, you bent out. Okay, that's fine.
To draw 2 cards or discard the Fishbone Quill for it as well. Develop your brain. Chris, again, still trying to look for some answers. Counting out his ink and trying to see whether he's got enough here, Chris, to play any Be Prepareds that he finds, in fact.
That's your hand. Oh, no, bomb.
Draws the card from Be Prep. Could still
Played 4 for Flaversham, yeah.
quest for 4. Or challenge into the Dragon, potentially, as well, to stop Jordan from being just 1 lore away from getting into the top 4. And that's what we're going to do as well. Scar will challenge and banish the Dragon Maleficent. And then looks like a 9 Dragon Maleficent will deal with the Lady Tremaine as well. And it leaves, once again, for Jordan, a familiar board state, just the lone Minnie Mouse. As Tremaine quests for 2. And Chris passes the turn, finds a Lady Tremaine. This is going to be a little bit more of an interesting decision here that Chris will have to make. Does decide to go for the exerted Tremaine. And Minnie Mouse will get back to her ways, questing for 1 and hoping that she's just flying under the radar. But I can't foresee that Minnie Mouse sticking around for too much longer, as we're going to pay 1. I think that was a Shield of Virtue, it looked like there. Quest 2 with Maleficent. Pay 3, restand with the shield, and then challenge into the Minnie Mouse, as Jordan rightfully sort of foresaw himself. Flavisham will quest for 1 as well, banish the shield to draw 2 more cards. And this is where this Dime Control deck and his Item Slingers deck as well gets into its best sort of gear and its best ability. Finds Madame Medusa as the final card to completely clear Jordan's board. And Jordan wants to have a look and see what resources Chris has used.
I've still got some very good cards.
Yeah.
There's an admittal there that Chris still has some very good cards left in the deck. Jordan can only play down a Hydra and pass the turn over to Chris, who can quest up to 10, potentially, if he wants to go all out. Chris counting out his ink and seeing exactly how much he has to work with. A reminder of the Hydra ability as well. Whenever the character is dealt damage, it can deal that much damage to a chosen opposing character. A legendary is a 6/5 for 5 as well. 6/5 for 6, I should say. There's play down the Tamatoa. Quest with Flavisham. Discard the Portsicle that was refetched back from the Tamatoa. Still plenty of ink to work with as well. Here's another Shield of Virtue, it looks like. Now pay 4. Flavisham is going to crack the shield, draw 2 more cards. This is slightly playing into be prepared, potentially, if Jordan has it, or can find it. Now you can hear Chris just asking for the explanation of the Hydra effect. If it's dealt damage, then it can deal damage equal to an opposing character. So Chris will decide to quest for the 2. 9 to 15 at the moment in this final game of the top 8 matchup. We'll quest again with Medusa up to 10. And pass the turn. We'll start immediately by challenging into the Medusa. Deals with the Maleficent Dragon as well, and then heals 3 of its damage immediately with the Rapunzel.
15.
Big acquisition there for Jordan on that turn. Still doesn't feel like out of the woods yet, especially with that Tamatoa still around. No items in play is probably the biggest saving grace here at the moment. So It would just be 13 that Chris could quest up to for the most part. Will play down a Mufasa. Present game on his side of the board and just hope that Chris does not find any answer. Rapunzel Lucky Dime, Bell Lucky Dime combo does win this game for Chris. And he counts out the amount of ink that he has available to him. Does Chris have enough? Is he going to be able to get himself into the top 4 and win that Enchanted Stitch promo card? Really having to think about this. He's either got it, if he can't win this turn, he's got to try and challenge into and deal with what's on board, and even then the Hydra will get some damage onto the one of the Flavishams. If Chris challenges in with Tamatoa. What tools does Chris have at his disposal in his hand to either deal with this game state and see next turn, or win the game for himself here? I think, is he going to try and go for the challenge? Is he going to try and go for the board clear? No. Quest for 1 with Tamatoa to start with. That puts him to 11. Will be able to gain back a Shield of Virtue from the Tamatoa effect after questing. Will use the shield, restand Tamatoa, and challenge into the Hydra.
Dies, and I get to deal 5 damage just as an else. So, I mean, I might as well do it tonight because it doesn't remember.
We'll double up the damage and we'll deal with Tamatoa. Chris quests for 1 more, up to 12. We'll discard Shield of Virtue, draw 2 cards, finds Be Prepared and Medusa. So, can escape this board state and does have ways to deal with the threat and not even have to allow Jordan the Mufasa search either. Maleficent Dragon is going to banish away the Rapunzel. Correctly so. I think the safest option that Chris can probably do here